There has long been speculation of tunnels, shafts, and chambers within the Great Sphinx and underneath it, including the possibility of a Hall of Records. In this video, I'm going to share with you several key pieces of evidence that prove that not only do these tunnels, shafts, and chambers exist, but there is an active attempt on behalf of the Egyptian authorities to prevent the citizens of the world from knowing about it. Let me start off by addressing the conspiracy that there is some sort of shaft door at the top of the Sphinx's head. At least that's what many people have referred to it as, various articles. I've looked at videos online about this, and you see people leaving comments saying that, no, this is CGI. There's no door at the top. That's non-existent. It's just a color fluctuation, and it means nothing. So I decided to go looking into this for myself, and I looked through Google Images and realized that there are so few aerial photos of the Sphinx. Apparently, the Egyptian authorities do not allow people to fly over it. So I went to Google Maps, and that was useless because, as you can see in the largest photo here, that is as far as you can zoom in. So I cropped the photograph, or I took a screenshot, cropped it, and I mean, yeah, you can kind of see a white blemish there, but I mean, what does this do for me? So I went over to the Google Earth app, and look at that. That is just useless. It's animated. I mean, what am I supposed to do with this? And it didn't always used to be this way. So I decided to go back to Google Images and do a ton of different searches. I got really creative, and I did find a photo from 1925. And as you can see here, I mean, there's a guy standing in it, but is this what, a 4 or 5 foot deep cavity? Is it a shaft? Does it go anywhere? It really doesn't show us much. But then I hit the jackpot. I don't think anyone watching this has seen these photos. So there's a photographer who was doing a story with the New York Times back in May of 1990. And as you can see in this photo here, yes, that is Dr. Zahi Hawass himself in the middle there. But pay close attention to the scaffolding over at the top of the Sphinx's head. Because in this next photo, well, just take a look for it and see for yourself. Look at that. What is that? Now, I don't know what else there is. The photographer doesn't point down there. This is all you can see. There's a hatch. But does it go anywhere? Is there any possibility that it's related to the imaging, the ground-penetrating radar that has discovered some sort of cavities within the Sphinx? Could it lead to the so-called chamber at the paw of the Sphinx, as I'll be discussing here shortly? There's obviously not enough information here to make any type of conclusion. But clearly, no, this is not CGI, and I find it really interesting that the Egyptian authorities have done so much to prevent anyone from knowing about this in the first place. Now, there has been other speculation, and this brings me to my second example, that there is some sort of shaft door at the top on the Sphinx's back towards the rear. And in fact, Zahi Hawass actually took people up there with a camera in 2009. And yeah, this shaft door exists. He opens it up on video, and I'll include a link for the video in the description here. It's 3.5 minutes long. You definitely need to watch it. But he opens up the door, he points down, and clearly you can see that at the bottom, I mean, it goes someplace. You can tell from the shadows. Which direction does it go? I have no idea. He himself says that it leads nowhere, and you go down there and there's nothing to be seen. He says that people probably dug it out at some point looking for treasures. Why not just put a camera, attach a rope to a camera and lower it down? Let us see. You can tell that it goes in some direction, so which direction does it go? It's fine if there's nothing down there, but at least show us a photograph. Show us an image of some kind. Why is it such a secret? And don't forget, Zahi Hawass had denied for decades that there was ever tunnels underneath the Sphinx, or in the Sphinx itself. And he had actually changed his story multiple times, as I'll discuss later in this video. But it raises questions. Could this lead to the cavities within the Sphinx, or the detected cavity below it? I mean, guys, ground-penetrating radar has shown that there's something there. Now let me go on to the next example, which is this infamous shaft tunnel doorway at the base of the Sphinx at the rear to the left of the tail. So look at these photos here. Anyone that's visited the site, you can't see what's down there. It goes to the left, it's too dark. But Dr. Zahi Hawass himself, in the same video as him going to the Sphinx's back and showing you that tunnel, he actually goes down into this chamber, through this shaft, and he takes a camera guy with him. And Zahi himself, in this video, states that it doesn't go anywhere, that he's excavated it, and there's nothing to be seen. But the cameraman doesn't even point the camera in the opposite direction. Clearly it goes somewhere, right? How difficult would it be to have the cameraman turn around, point a flashlight, and let us see what's in there? Which direction does it go? Okay, you say there's nothing in there, but at least let us see the nothing. Why is there not one single photo or video available to the public that shows anything beyond this point? And most people don't even know that this exists in itself. What's interesting about this is that in the 1970s, a stone block came loose, so they began an excavation where Mark Lehner was part of it, a very close associate of Zahi Hawass for decades. They spent 3 weeks excavating this tunnel shaft that Zahi Hawass says goes nowhere and there's nothing in it. I mean, I know that excavations take some time, but 3 weeks, if it went nowhere and there was nothing in it, and they decided to go ahead and shroud it in the process where nobody could see what they were doing, okay. And not to mention, stories go back centuries that there is a tunnel system that connects the Great Sphinx and the Hall of Records to the pyramids. Could this lead to that? Now, the next example I want to discuss involves what ground-penetrating radar has discovered as a cavity of some kind, a chamber, underneath the paw of the Sphinx. And this is something that's been discussed by John Anthony West, Robert Schoch. But Zahi Hawass took a team, they did some drilling, and they concluded that, well, they found absolutely nothing. That there's nothing underneath it, and there's nothing to be seen here. So just to clarify, is he saying that ground-penetrating radar was wrong? Like, what, and why aren't you letting anyone else see this for themselves? Why did you cap it off and prevent any other archaeologists from checking it out, such as John Anthony West and Robert Schoch? But then I saw something really interesting while watching one of Brian Forster's videos about this topic. He points out an incredibly interesting fact, which is that the Sphinx itself is carved out of limestone bedrock, and all around the Sphinx itself is limestone bedrock, to the left of it, to the right of it, and in between the paws, except for one area in front of the paws that has these stone tiles. And you can see here that they have been starting to replace them. They're very old, and they've been doing maintenance and restorations to it. But why would you have these stone tiles in front of the Sphinx, the only place around it that has these, by the way? And it just so happens to be located where ground-penetrating radar has identified a cavity, a chamber of some kind. And as you look at these other photos, they have since covered up the entire site, at least in front of it, with these stone tiles, with these boardwalks. Could these tiles be indicative of some sort of roofing system for the chamber below? I want to point something else that's really interesting. So if you go to Wikipedia, which of course I do not endorse for so many reasons, but if you go and look up the Great Sphinx in Wikipedia, do a Control F. Search for the words shaft, chamber, tunnel, underground, under Sphinx, anything under the Sphinx, Hall of Records, and not one single of these words pops up, not one of them. Now that's really interesting. But if you look up the Hall of Records, which has its own Wikipedia page, you'll find a link to the Great Sphinx. And of course, you'll find a link to pseudo-archaeology as well. Now, if you think that Wikipedia is unreliable because of the fact that anyone can edit it, well, that's actually no longer the case, and it hasn't been for several years now. Wikipedia has been bought and paid for. And Cheryl Atkinson, who I highly recommend you check out her TED Talk about this subject, outlines it in detail. And if you don't believe me on this, try and do the edit yourself and see what happens. Now, let me transition to something incredibly interesting. Dr. Zahi Hawass himself went on TV. He stated that he found a shaft 29 meters down, 95 feet approximately, that's located directly between, or exactly between, the Sphinx and the second pyramid itself, Chephren, also known as Khafra. He stated that there's a tomb down there, and most likely to be the god Osiris himself, the god of the underworld, the god of the afterlife. And in fact, he's famous for seeing this judgment scene as you see here, but you can find him everywhere else. These depictions are in the Valley of the Kings and all over the place. And of course, it's interesting that he always has green skin. It makes you wonder what that's about. So I came across a video. Now, this is from Fox, and this was filmed, I believe, in 1999. It could have been 96. But they take a crew down there. They take this lady, and they actually go to the site. And here I'm showing you screenshots from this video. And I highly recommend you check out this video. The link is in the description. It's 13 minutes long. And it is fascinating. But let me get through this. So as you can see here, it has multiple layers or levels, and they stagger off, and the deepest is 95 feet down. So they go down this chamber, this shaft, carved through solid limestone bedrock. In the first, or I should say the middle level, there is a set of tombs, and there's a sarcophagus in there as well. Even some bone fragments as well, but the place has apparently been looted or something. So as they keep going, and as you can see here, they go from the, and by the way, this is 55 feet or 65 feet deep. It was hard to tell what she said in the video because of audio issues. But as they go to the next set of shafts, it goes from that 50, 60 foot mark down to the approximately 100 feet down. Look how impressive this thing is. So it dives down to the depths of the earth underneath the Giza Plateau. And in it, there is this incredible burial site. 4 massive pillars with hieroglyphs and petroglyphs, surrounded by a water moat. And by the way, this site was completely submerged in water when they found it. They had to pump it out. It took a while. And as he shows her this massive sarcophagus, it's still about a foot down underwater. He thinks that it's probably Osiris, but they weren't sure yet as they were still conducting the excavation. And this sarcophagus itself is 9 feet long. The lid and the box individually are approximately 11 to 12 tons, according to Zahi Hawass. And when the lady asks him, how did they bring this massive thing down here? He gives a theory. He said he doesn't know, but his theory is that they would have probably dug a second shaft. So first they dig the first shaft, they fill it with sand, and then they dig a second shaft right next to it and start moving sand away, and it slowly lowers itself down by itself, if that makes sense. Except for the fact that there's no evidence for this. This shaft, if this is indeed the case, you'd have to be able to find it within the perimeter of the chamber itself or immediately outside the perimeter, but there's some issues with this theory. Besides the fact that archaeologists never found it, which, I mean, come on, that should be easy to find. But again, each level, it staggers between the shafts. So how many secondary shafts would they have to have dug? And again, through limestone bedrock, that's not an easy task. And look at the precision of this. But here's where it gets even more interesting. So Zahi Hawass takes her to, as you can see, there's these 2 tunnels that extend outwards from this tomb, this burial site itself. One of which he claims has never been excavated, and he doesn't know what's down there. This is his own words, by the way. You can watch this in the video. Well, first of all, I don't believe that. You don't know what's down there. You didn't go take a peek. Like, give me a break. But why not at least point the camera down there with a flashlight for just a second? Why does he have to block it off like this? Which direction do these tunnel shafts, these tunnels go? That's an incredibly important question, considering the fact that these legends of a Hall of Records being located under the Sphinx connects from an underground tunnel from the Sphinx to the pyramids themselves. You know, this is the same guy that is back in Egypt, despite being fired from the Minister of Antiquities of Egypt for his corruption, despite the fact that a few years after his firing, he was implicated in a massive theft of artifacts from a pyramid. And this is what he's implicated in. He gets off the hook, and now he's chosen to be the guy leading the entire excavation for the 3 mysteriously discovered chambers within the Great Pyramid itself. As you may have seen in the news, and I've discussed this in multiple other videos, he is the guy leading that discovery. The same guy who changed his story multiple times about the very existence of chambers and tunnels in the Sphinx itself has denied all that, went back and forth, only to say, well, there is some tunnels and some shafts, but they don't go anywhere. There's nothing to see. We have to start connecting the dots on this. There are shafts. There are tunnels. They don't show us any information. I mean, isn't it pretty odd that there's not a single photograph or video of anything down underneath? They show us only a little bit and then just stop there. Is that not suspicious? Or the fact that they clearly control Wikipedia. I mean, these anonymous moderators, I mean, it's bought and paid for. Who do you think's doing it? Whoever's doing it, it's not an accident that they completely omit tunnels, shafts, chambers, Hall of Records, all from the Wikipedia page of the Great Sphinx. And regardless of whether you never even look at Wikipedia, it is still the world's most utilized source of information. It's not an accident that it shows up at the very top of any Google search. So that's important because this is deceiving the citizens of the world. They are omitting information. The cover-up is real. There's enough information to conclude that there's something there. We know this. So the question becomes, does that tunnel shaft that he showed us on TV on Fox decades ago, does that lead to or from the Great Sphinx? I'll close up there. I'm Jimmy. This is Bright Insight. Like and subscribe and leave me a comment. Let me know what your thoughts are. Many more videos to come on a whole wide variety of topics. Take care, everybody.